let's move on to our next issue, which is early installation of ignition interlock device, okay? I'm amazed at the number of defense attorneys who, A, don't know about this, and B, don't advise their clients at all, let alone advise them properly. So I want to go through the basics on it. I'm going to keep it real simple. It's all spelled out for you in your lesson plan. But for your guy to qualify, first of all, he's got to get arrested by the cops for DWI, okay? Now, theoretically, the minute they release him from custody, hand him his summons and complaint and say, get out, somebody will come and pick you up and leave, he can make his application for the early installation, interlock installation immediately. Here are the criteria. Number one, he has to have had a valid New Jersey driver's license on the date that he got arrested for drunk driving. I'm picking my words here very carefully. The license has to be from New Jersey, and it has to be valid. Number two, he has to maintain a valid New Jersey driver's license during the time the case is pending, up until the time he goes to court to deal with his drunk driving, okay? Has to be valid the whole time. Valid initially and remain valid, maintain it. That's the word they use in the statute during that time period, okay? Now, advantages. It's all going to depend on, and by the way, procedurally, he'll go down to motor vehicles, he goes to any installer and shows him a copy of his ticket to show that he actually has a case that's pending. The installer will install the ignition interlock device and give him some additional paperwork. He then goes down to the Motor Vehicle Commission, presents the paperwork from the installer that proves that he has an interlock device on his vehicle, and motor vehicles will then issue him a restricted driver's license, saying that you can now continue to drive just like you did before, except you can only drive vehicles that are equipped with an ignition interlock device. That license is what he's going to take to court and present it at the time of sentencing in order to take advantage of all the things that you get when you've installed the ignition interlock device in your vehicle early, okay? Now, tactically, keep these things in mind, because there are certain situations where you're going to want to get it installed a couple of days before court, and there are other situations where you want to get it installed right away after the guy's been arrested. Let's talk about the people who are going to get it installed a couple of days before court. If you're dealing with a first offender, there's no upside to getting an early installation of the interlock. The only advantage you're going to get with a first offender, and remember, by the way, these are cases that only deal with alcohol. No drugs, no chemical inhalants, none of that other stuff, okay?
No serious bodily injury?
SB has to have SBI, serious bodily injury, but those are never going to be in municipal court anyway. Those are always going to be up to prosecutor's office. But Johnny's right. I mean, that's one of the things that excludes you, okay? But if your guy is just a first offender, there's no upside to getting early installation. What I would advise my client to do is get it installed about a week before court and get the license then. Because the only advantage you're going to have by having it is when you walk into court, there's two advantages actually. Advantage number one is normally the judge would take your regular driver's license and put you on the revoke list until such time as you've gotten the ignition interlock device installed and gotten a restricted license for motor vehicles. By early installation, you've obviated the need for that. You already have the interlock and you've already got your restricted license, so the judge doesn't have to suspend you at all. That's number one. Number two, for first offender, the judge will not be allowed to fine you. Your fine is forgiven. So let's say it's a $300 fine for a first offender. What will happen is that the defendant will be able to use the money that he would have paid toward the fine and use that instead to pay for the cost of the interlock for the next 3 months that he's going to maintain it on his vehicle. Okay?
Yeah, keep in mind, though, the guy's still going to have to pay his VCCB, his safe neighborhoods, his drunk driving enforcement fund, and his court costs.
Yeah, the limitation is just on the fine component of it. All the other stuff, they still have to pay. The guy who is a second or subsequent offender, for these individuals, it makes sense to get it installed early. Not only are they going to get the fine forgiven, but they start getting credit against their license suspension. They get a 1-day credit for every 2 days that they have the ignition interlock device installed on their vehicle, as demonstrated through the proof of the license, okay, that you're going to present in court, the restricted license. So depending, if these cases go on for a long time, this could be a substantial credit, especially if your guy's only going to get a 1-year suspension on a second offense. you know, the credits can eat into that a lot and reduce the suspension term your guy's going to get tremendously. But
And they were tested on a 9510.
and he might have been tested on 9510, and maybe they won't get any suspension at all. Okay. You've got to think about this tactically, discuss it with your client, and lay out all the options to your client. Okay. And again, the advantages are going to change depending on what the BAC is and also how many prior offenses your guy has.
Now, Bob, the MVC is still working out the bugs on issuing these driver's licenses. So
We've made
you've
some
got
progress
to,
because down in Trenton, I've had a lot of clients come through and they've gotten their restricted licenses. So it may be that some of the service centers are more ahead of the others, but down in Trenton, they haven't had any problem with that. Okay.
okay, it's good to know.
So, but anybody, listen, all you guys remember now, your client, it's got to be an alcohol case, nothing else except alcohol, and no serious bodily injury, license valid at the date of the stop, maintained throughout the time. When you walk into court, you got to present the judge with the license, and that's your proof that the ignition interlock device is on there. Okay. I've given you in your lesson plan the necessary steps that your client has to take. And there's a table here with all the advantages based upon the offense number and what the BAC is. Okay. Be mindful again, no drugs, no refusals, no chemical inhalants, none of that stuff. It only applies to alcohol. All right.